Thank you for joining us, Soumya, for the first TIA talks, and such an important topic also because it's really taking away a lot from people, and like we get to learn about these big scams that happen with maybe a retired professional or a doctor, but there are a lot of smaller scams that keep happening, like the loan scams that you talk about. So it's a really important topic right now, and so thank you so much for sharing with us. And so I'll just introduce Soumya for others. So Soumya is a business journalist based in Mumbai. She works as an editor at Mint and covers the newspaper's Consumer Economy Bureau. Previously, she has worked with Economic Times, Fortune India, and media startups like the Cap Table and the Signal. Soumya has been reporting on consumer retail, advertising, social media, and entertainment businesses, and tracking big stories on big tech, Meta, Google, Amazon, along with Indian conglomerates such as Reliance. And she has a BA in political science from Dartmouth College. And she is also the author of the book that we are going to discuss today, Bharat Bluff.
I'll just plug it.
I
That's my book.
I also have it, which the book was an amazing read. I think I want to congratulate you on that because it's important for a book to be easy to read. Book like this, which is important for people to know about the different kinds of scams, which has to be easy to read. I could finish it in 3 days, despite everything else. So I think that was a good idea to write it to make the flow easy enough for people to sort of understand and read it quickly. So coming
Yes.
to the book, you've covered technology and consumer internet for over a decade. What was the moment when you realized that scams weren't just like isolated incidents and you wanted to talk about the economy and the ecosystem and document it in a book?
So much before my publisher, Rolly Books, got in touch about this, or we got talking about a book at all, uh, we had started to encounter stories of scams that were showing up in my daily reporting job. So, for example, we covering social media and entertainment, for example, we covered a lot of influencer economy stories. And this is just during the pandemic when the bull run in the market was making people rich overnight. I saw increasingly there were these scammy Telegram groups that I would also join just to see what was going on. Or my editor would commission stories saying that, hey, we've heard SEBI is investigating some Instagrammer or some YouTuber, which is really new for that time. Of course, now it's become very routine for them. Uh, so in my daily work, I began to see the role of scams coming up in what is arguably not really related to scam economy. I mean, I write on consumer and retail and on social media. At the same time, in my personal life, I started to see so many more stories of people that I know personally who would, at some point in a conversation, let it slip that they had lost money or they knew that they had lost somebody who had lost money. And one of the stories in this book, in fact, is of how my husband and I also lost money to a very ridiculous and somewhat humiliating scam. I won't lie, and it took me a while to realize that all of us around us is in some way or the other getting connected to some kind of scam. Not to mention the insane volume of calls, messages, and emails that we keep getting, which were getting increasingly tailored as well to who we are and what our lives look like. So I think by the time that I started work on this book in mid 2024, it had become obvious to pretty much everybody in the country that we're in the midst of a deluge of scams of pretty much every kind, and no one seems to be safe from it. Yet we had no idea of why is this happening? What is the size of this scam industry? Who's benefiting from this? And why is it unstoppable? So these are such fundamental questions when you're looking at any phenomenon that we realized, my commissioning editor and I, that it just makes sense to write a book that, if nothing else, just documents the times that we're living through and tries to make sense of why this is happening to us. So that's how we got started.
Absolutely. I mean, when we were documenting scam stories, we would reach out to people who were not journalists, who would just be people like friends of friends, and then we would ask them about what kind of scams have you come across, and there would always be plenty, and plenty that we were not even aware of, some that we were also aware of, but the way in which someone had reached them, like one of the scammers had reached them, would be different, maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it's it's huge out there.
it
Uh,
is.
yeah, I would just, I mean, come back to the book. I'll ask you what's the idea behind Bharat Bluff? Why the name Bharat Bluff?
been asked this a lot, and not everyone likes the answer or the title. See, it's a catchy title, so that was one of the biggest briefs that my publisher gave me. Uh, the other reason is, scams have not come out of isolation. There is a watershed moment in Indian history, which would be when data became so ridiculously cheap, and a billion people plus are now online and have access to a some kind of a smartphone. Not 1 billion actual smartphone owners, but everybody in some way or the other is accessing the internet. And that's roughly around the time when Reliance launched Geo, and we saw what we did. We are now about 10 years from that moment. So of course, moment of there is a moment of revolution, digital revolution that has built India to the economic powerhouse in a way that we are today. But the idea behind the title was also to show that our digital revolution is comes with an underbelly. That that was the inherent idea between Bharat Bluff, in a way that you think that internet access should have made our lives better, but in a way, many of us are getting conned into losing our life savings or being part of a system that leaves us with bitterness and lifelong loss, and perhaps a lifelong distrust of the internet or of other people. So that's a tragedy, right? We should be seeing the internet transform everybody's lives, but instead it's destroying homes and entire families. So that was the idea of the title.
Quite interesting. I'll move on. So you describe India as becoming the world sort of scam capital. Would you say it's primarily like a technology problem because of lack of media literacy in the country, or is it like a governance problem, or is it like an economic problem, or it's all of the above?
Yeah, it's a tough question to ask, and honestly, more than my book, many policymakers and people who work on ground on these things, and fact checkers, they've attempted to answer this in very significant ways. I think it's all of this. Uh, for various reasons. Of course, 10 years is a very short time to engage with a rapidly changing technology, including now with AI. So there's no way that the average Indian has the kind of media literacy that you need to be able to protect yourself. Second is governance. Our laws, our enforcement of existing laws, they're not good enough to protect us from scams. They also leave a lot of onus on people in misaligned ways, which means sometimes it's all left to user discretion. Sometimes it's all left to an intermediary that is unfairly tasked with taking responsibility of everything, with no government support or policing support. And then of course it's an economic issue, and that I think is a little underappreciated, because if there are so many scams happening, there's also an endless supply of people who are part of the scam workforce, either as the frontline salespeople, if you want to call them that, making these calls or sending these messages, or very clearly very talented people building out the digital infrastructure to enable this. And it is heavily fueled by India's ongoing unemployment crisis, which is expected to only get worse for younger people. Plus, I would add, it's also a social or sociological problem. We are probably the only society in the world where if you are scammed as an individual, people laugh at you or they expect you to take responsibility. Anywhere else in the world, on average, when someone lies to you or takes advantage of you, the normal reaction is, oh, that's so sad. It's very unfortunate. People don't talk about getting scammed in India because it's seen as a humiliation and a personal failure. And I think actually that is probably one of the biggest reasons why we become a scam economy, and one of the most underappreciated reasons why they continue to get perpetrated.
Absolutely agree. I mean, one of the things with the governance issue is something that we've been talking about a lot as fact checkers as well. And there's not enough happening at the moment. And wherever we go, wherever we are speaking with law enforcement, and we're facing the same issues, that even at the law enforcement part of it, also there's not much happening.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, last year, Rajni, I, and a couple of others, we attended the Global Anti-Scam Summit in Singapore. and we were basically talking about the different kinds of scams. We were sharing sort of types of scams happening in the Southeast Asian region, because this that was the Southeast Asian Summit. This is an organization based in Netherlands, but they were having a Southeast Asian sort of meeting. And whenever I spoke about the digital arrest scam and how big it is in India, um, absolutely no one had any idea about it. People from the West had no idea. Even people from the Southeast Asian region did not know about it. I later got to know that some of the diaspora people from Singapore and other places had some idea about it. But everyone just, I mean, were basically laughing at me at the idea of how someone can be convinced into just giving
Mhm.
up money in digital scams. So why do you think that is? Why do you think it's like unique to India?
Yeah, this is a great point, and I'm actually kind of surprised that people outside the country don't know about it. But I guess it makes sense because at the heart of the digital arrest scam and the opening story in Bharat Bluff is of a young man who nearly falls to digital arrest. Unlike the standard target, which is usually elderly people, uh, the heart of the digital arrest scam is fear of the authorities, of the police. So the whole MO works by first accusing you of as many crimes as can stick to you psychologically, then driving you with shame by making sure you don't talk to other people about it and convince you that you are probably guilty of something, even if it is by mistake, even if it is a crime that's happened to you because of some error you may have committed. And then third, hurriedly forcing you into making some kind of payment off the books to make the problem go away. Now, these three things can only exist in a society where the police is already expected to do these things. We are a country where the police's extrajudicial activities, whether it is violence or coercion, are not just normalized. In fact, they're celebrated in large parts of our society. We are in a country where it's normal for us to bribe the police to make a problem go away, so to speak. And also because of the fear of the authorities, people aren't aware of their rights in the process of being arrested. Plus, we have draconian laws which don't make sense, but which allow the police to do all kinds of things to us. So, with that environment in mind, if a police officer from a control room dressed to the T in a commissioner's uniform, including great set design, such as you can hear walkie talkie chatter in the background and all of that, calls me and tells me, hey, I have information that you've been shipping fake passports to Pakistani terrorists in Canada, for example. It doesn't take a lot to convince somebody that even if I haven't done this crime, I'm surely in trouble because now the police is involved. And so, yeah, I don't think that the police behaves this way in most other countries, certainly not in the West. And I think even in relatively corrupt nations in Southeast Asia, people are not used to such egregious police excesses. And so that makes us uniquely vulnerable to the digital scam. And Bloomberg had a great Pulitzer Prize winning graphic novel on the stories of people who've been caught up in this. And it really delves into the psychology of what happens to you with when somebody like that calls you from the other side of the line.
Yeah, that was probably my guess, would have been my guess as well, like the inherent fear of authority and the lack of awareness that everyone has. And probably like, one of the other things that also comes to mind, like people uh because of the lack of awareness of how to deal with certain financial situations, you're always worried about if I'm not reporting this 10 rupee income, am I doing like a crime which can then be used against me or something?
Yeah.
And then because there's no one to sort of educate you about these things, then it turns out that someone is able to convince you that you can be arrested digitally for this. One other thing that you mentioned about your book opening with the digital scam. One other thing that I found really interesting was the people who were scammed in the book come from like various sort of backgrounds,
Yeah.
economic, social backgrounds that were very different. So I would wanted to ask you if. Through your research, do you find that like a particular group, like age group or social and economic group, was impacted disproportionately by scams?
In the collection of individual anecdotes, you'll see that there is a wide variety of people. So your income or your education level or your tech savviness is not quite enough to protect you.
Yeah.
I think some of the best examples are, of the journalist Nidhi Razdan, and she wrote her own experience getting scammed in the New York Times, with seemingly no motive as well in the end, at least not financial. So
Yeah.
you can build extremely sophisticated scams to trap people. And after this book came out, I got messages and calls from many people I know professionally from my work who told me in private that something similar had happened to us like this and we lost crores, but we don't want to talk about it in person. So I don't think that any one set of people in the country are safe from this. But having said that, yes, there are factors that can leave you more vulnerable to scams. And we've talked about this in the book. So, for example, women who come from less privileged or particularly rural homes and maybe getting access to the internet for the first time, particularly financial access, they're likely to be more vulnerable to all kinds of scams and also much less likely to report them for fear of losing that access and that sense of independence. Similarly, people in financial distress, they're the ones who turn to loan apps for the first time, and they don't know what they get themselves into. Uh, we are also a very conservative society. So the more conservative you are, the more easy it is to blackmail you into money. So romance scams and loan app scams that rely on AI deepfakes to shame you into money or blackmail you into money, they work exceedingly well in small cities or on young couples or people who are vulnerable to being shamed, for example. So those are certain factors that leave us more vulnerable. But I do think that from my research, what I've understood is that no one should feel themselves invincible or unable to be scammed for sure.
Absolutely. Since you mentioned the loan apps, there's a part in your book also which talks about the sort of loopholes in the Play Store and App Store where these loan apps get listed, and then people are able to. So people, I mean, the scamsters are able to target people who would possibly make use of it, and then ultimately become like larger targets from there on. I want you to share about it, how that research began, because that was quite unique in the book about how these loopholes exist and how this scam sort of starts from the scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a part of the book that I really enjoyed reporting because it relies heavily on the online advertising business, which has fueled the rise of social media and big tech, American big tech in particular in India. So, loan app scams run through various ways. The first thing you need to do is to take money from a scammy loan app. Not all of them scam you. So there are different ways in doing this. There are loan app scams that are legit. They may have access to an NBFC license. Those loan apps will give you a payday loan or some kind of extremely ridiculously highly priced loan, and then make it so that it's nearly impossible for you to repay it, and then use various blackmail and other tactics to take money out from you. Then there is another category altogether of loan apps that masquerade as legitimate apps, even co-opting the identity of real existing loan apps and well-known financial institutions. And they're straight up just scamming you. They don't have a license to lend. They pretend to lend you money. They loop your bank account into a large network of mule accounts. They may even ask you to pay an upfront fee in lieu of processing your loan and you just run away with that money. So there are many MOs to exploiting a user's desire for quick money. But the MO that works for them is that the people operating these loan apps are exceedingly good at marketing the apps within the App Store and the Play Store, depending on where you are, and also on larger social media feeds where banner ads, etc., are common. What they will do is learn how to get their sponsored results come up first when you search for a legitimate app name, or pay additional money, which you can do in the app store, for example, so that if you're searching for a legitimate loan app or a legitimate even UPI app, the scammy loan app's name will come up first. They're good at hacking app store rankings within certain particular sub niches. In some cases, if they have been banned once, a developer, they even create a new kind of app, say a calculator app. Use that to advertise a loan app, get you to download that APK on your phone directly, and then reroute you into their loan app streams. So essentially, they have become masters of digital advertising, and digital advertising agencies are some of the biggest employers also of younger people coming out from our colleges. So clearly they're learning how to game the algorithm, game the systems of big tech platforms. In fact, Reuters had published in November last year, and I've cited this in my book, is that Meta has been making a whole lot of money allegedly from running fraudulent app ads on all of their platforms. So the companies are aware of this problem. But who says no to good money with reasonable, plausible deniability and reasonable protections in place, which all of these companies are careful to do. So I stumbled on the exact MO also by speaking to Babulal Yadav, who is a fintech expert. And in his free time, he collates data on scammy loan apps, warns the public about them on his platform, and also sends these reports to Google, to Apple, to all of these companies to tell them to take these apps down. And he spent 4 hours walking me through a live demo of how these companies operate. And it was fascinating. It shows you that digital advertising, which is a $1 trillion business in the country, is this is the part of it that's probably not getting enumerated and not being taken a close look at. So there are some case studies as well in the book, and you'll be able to see exactly how scammy loan apps operate.
You mentioned how about the Reuters report about how big tech also profits of these scams, and the fact that a lot of these app stores, the vulnerabilities in these app stores are being misused or being
Mhm.
exploited by scammers. So, in such a case, where do you think the sort of who's more responsible? Whether it's the liability and are big tech supposed to do more? How much more do they do? And where else do you think the responsibility lies?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the Data Protection Act, which is yet to come in force, it fixes a lot of responsibility on data fiduciaries and on the way that intermediaries should act. Although there are countless legal and tech opinions on exactly where are the gaps in the way the DPTP Act fixes this responsibility. There is also the responsibility on the banking institutions through which all this money actually gets routed. For example, one lady who got in touch with me after I wrote this book said, I'm not a tech person. I don't understand banking regulations or tech regulations. All I know is apparently there are hundreds of mule accounts in this country. What is the RBI doing? Why can't it shut it down? So the public's awareness of how these things work is also less. So we don't understand perhaps the nuances as well of tracking these things down, and how complex it can be, and how much offshore financial flows are also part of this. So there is certainly a huge responsibility on intermediaries, both technological and banking. But I believe also we need to find a way to prevent people from getting into these scam centers in the first place. A lot of it is running offline, I mean offshore for sure, and Ayush's reporting in the scroll was a very good example of it. But there are plenty of people sitting right at home and doing this, and there are entire YouTube channels dedicated to taking these people down. But it doesn't look like it is the law enforcement's top priority. And I don't think that gets talked about enough. I mean, yes, I could stop Meta from taking one scammy loan app's advertising money for a few months, and certainly they will do it when they are told to. But this scamster is sitting in some town somewhere in the country. Why is local authority not acting against him? So that is the harder work. It's the longer term work that doesn't get talked about.
Absolutely. I just also wanted to cover one aspect of it. I mean, you've been a journalist for these many years, and you mentioned how you covered sort of the scams that have happened before you started working on the book as well. I want to understand, like, what is missing in the current reporting about scams, and how can newsrooms make reporting about scams and frauds better in their sort of reportage?
So, uh, one of the reasons we wrote this book also is you could see nearly every day scams are reported in daily newspapers, and there is now all newspapers have a crime page dedicated to just cyber crimes of these crime. And on the other end, you have very technical policies being discussed by lawyers, by privacy advocates, and others that are talking about legal and institutional frameworks. That gap is I mean, these two disparate things aren't getting covered to simply communicate to people what is happening, basically. Why are we getting scammed? What can we do about it? So this book is an attempt to cover that gap. I think in newsrooms too, there is either a lot of sometimes voyeuristic coverage of these personalities at the heart of a lot of scams. Sure, you do want to chronicle how these scams happen and how people get into it. They make for good cautionary tales. Or there are a lot of op-eds from tech experts, but they don't. They're not able to. An ordinary person cannot correlate it to their life and their experience. So maybe what newsrooms should do is think about looking at repeated patterns rather than individual stories. To look at vulnerable communities, that would be another one, and to look at the intersection between the crime pages and your op-ed pages to see what are we doing to identify a pattern of scams repeatedly and why it is occurring, so that we can start talking about prevention. We can start talking about community protection, for example. Ultimately, you can only rely on I mean, maybe this is a bit of a cynical view, so please don't take it that seriously. But you can only rely on authorities and intermediaries so much to protect you, and you can only go chasing the money you've lost or the harassment you've faced for so long. It would be a lot better if our newsrooms and our communities could come together to start protecting people in that moment just before somebody starts to get scammed. And that would be the dream, at least from a person's point of view. And newsrooms can certainly help with that.
Absolutely agree. I loved Indian Express's reporting on it about how there was a village where a lot of people were getting scammed,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was really interesting. Plus the fact that what you also mentioned about the voyeuristic coverage that we see often, what we miss out is the micro scams. You know, the
Yeah.
200 rupee scam. What Shobha also mentioned, the 22 rupee scam.
Yeah.
These accumulate and these become huge at one point, because no one cares about spending 100 rupees and not getting any product in return.
Mhm.
But when we look at reporting, we're only seeing when there's a 12 crore scam or a 15 crore scam, digital arrest scam, and not the 100 rupee scams.
Mhm.
So that also, I think, we have to sort of accumulate all those types of scams and mention how big that industry is.
Yeah.
So we are almost about to run out of time, but I just wanted to hopefully end with a good sort of positive sort of note. So you spent a lot of time, a couple of years, sort of in researching and then writing the book. I want to understand. You've mentioned a couple of advices in the book itself, so for people who can go back and read on how to prevent. But the couple of interventions that you think would actually work for people.
Yeah, again, a question that a lot of people ask, and I should preface it by saying that I'm not a cyber expert, so you should consult someone who knows these things technically. From the people I've interviewed and the stories I've read, a lot of advice comes to you. You know, use a password manager, have basic password hygiene. Don't give out your phone number and contact details every time you go out to buy a coffee or do grocery shopping. You can always say no, and there are enough laws and Supreme Court and other court orders saying so. But I think what we are missing and we need to do in a longer run as a society is two things. One is start understanding the value of privacy. It has an impact on our life. We as a society don't think that, we've seen this line all the time. Hey, if you have nothing to hide, why would you worry about handing over your data? And I think only now, for the first time on a scale, we are seeing the impact of letting our data out, floating about on the internet for so long. It comes back to bite you in the form of a KYC scam call or a fake loan apps scam call, all of these. So that's one. We need to socially and culturally change our perspective on the importance of data privacy. The second thing I would say is, when you get scammed, the first reaction after the anger and humiliation and the fear is you start to trust everything and everybody less. You talk to people less because you don't want to share that story. You don't want to buy things online for a while, or you triple and quadruple check everything before you make a transaction online. It leaves you ironically more vulnerable to scams, not less, when you don't trust people and things. So this is again more long-term thing, but I think we need to start building more community discussions and networks around getting scammed. So if you have been scammed, share that story. And so many victims in this book um, trusted me with their story, including people who came on the record, and their only motivation was it happened with me, it should not happen to others. So that's one. And second is, if you feel pressured or worried that you might be on the receiving end of something life threatening and it could be a scam, simple thing, a simple moment such as telling your family about it or asking a friend about it can actually protect you more than any other law or any other intermediary or anybody else really could. And we don't do that because we are generally speaking a low trust society. So those two things, I would say, community and the culturally moving towards data privacy are probably going to yield us far more results than maybe a lot of other things that we discuss about data scam prevention.
I really like the point of culturally moving towards data privacy because everyone around me is very open with giving out their phone numbers when
Yeah.
I go to a cafe. And I mean, more recently, I had an Amazon delivery for a furniture which would have required an OTP, but
Hmm.
the delivery agent asked for my Aadhaar number as well, along with the OTP. I was like,
My God, what
why do
next?
you
Blood group.
need, why do you need my Aadhaar number for the delivery? I have the OTP, just give it to me. And just I just gave a fake like random numbers without it didn't even have the number of digits, and the person was okay with it. So that's
Hmm.
how. But like a lot of others around me don't take this seriously at all. So I think that's
Yeah.
good advice. Good advice. So right now I'll open it up to the audience for some Q&A. Gen
Yeah.
Z. So people can also drop in their questions in the chat, and if anyone wants to unmute and ask the question, that's also fine. Jency, would you want to go first?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Abhilash and Soumya, for that wonderful discussion.
Agency.
Soumya, hi, Soumya. I wanted to ask you, since you've been a business reporter for so long, and what has bothered me actually is not the small ticket scams, but it is actually the big ticket scams. So if we see over the last 2 years, and unfortunately I don't have the data, but if we collect it, we will be able to see that the number of cases where senior citizens, or not even senior citizens, even others as well, who've been scammed in this digital arrest, the individual unit of that scam is not small. They run into lakhs and crores. So I've read stories where someone has transferred 21 crores. Now, first of all, who the hell has that kind of money? And secondly, if you have that kind of money, what are you doing by transferring that money, right? So these are some very valid questions being raised. But I'm asking from the point of view of even RBI. What is the RBI doing here? Um, if any one of us have ever tried to transfer money to anyone, there are hell lot of restrictions. There's a friction that RBI has built into this entire thing. Like if it's a new account, then you can only transfer 50,000 rupees, or then after 24 hours you can then transfer a certain amount of money. It's the multiples are always in either thousands or lakhs. So it beats me how RBI has not been able to figure this out. I'm not seeing any reporting. Even if they have figured, and if they've told the banks, we are not seeing any reporting on it, and the number of digital arrests are just increasing. It's not as if it has stopped, right? And I've tried to ask these questions to even law enforcement officers, and they kind of try to beat around the bush, saying, "Nee, nee, wo mule accounts mein jata hai," and all of that. But my question to them is that if you have built-in friction for an ordinary bank customer, where you're not even able to transfer thousands, a few thousands, and a few lakh rupees without having so many KYC banks calling you, asking whether are you the one who's pushing out this money? Why is it that the law enforcement has not been able to go onto these trail and figure out where have these crores of rupees gone? I mean, like in the process of writing this book, have you ever come across anyone raising these questions, and whether RBI has really not put their thoughts behind this?
That's a great question. And like you said, RBI has put in so much friction, not just in terms of how much money you can transfer in the first 24, 48, 72 hours, but also in terms of auto flagging suspicious transactions using their own AI systems. And I believe the RBI is also starting a pilot for some of these things from Jan next year that will run into a year. So it's not as if they're not doing things. Yes, I did try to understand from law enforcement why recovery takes so long. So I think I have a number as well, which was discussed in the parliament. 1.42 lakh crore rupees worth of scam money lost to scams in total in the last 5 years. And I believe recovery was somewhere around some 6 or 7 thousand crores. So not even a sizable fraction of the total money. The thing that keeps coming up is the mule accounts bit. That is true. That the velocity with which money, once taken from a victim, is moved to hundreds of thousands of accounts. Then the trail gets lost. These things is what law enforcement does tell us routinely. I'll admit that I focused more on the stories of the victims rather than what the law enforcement were doing because the answers are not so clear. I think the other thing is, Jency, when I spoke to the victims, and some people reached out to me after the book was published as well. One lady who lost about 8 to 10 crores, and she's on a WhatsApp group of other people who lost, I think, collectively over 100 crores. So just digital arrest. The trap is psychological. The scammers will have you on the phone for days on end, ensuring that if RBI or the bank blocks you, then you use somebody else's account to send money. You use a third person's account to send money. But you make sure the money goes to that person because of the fear that's trapped you in. And so I can see that banks are flagging such repeated transfers. The managers will call up the customer and say, hey, we can see you're transferring a lot of money. You should stop doing that. Or even when I try to open my banking app while I'm on a video call with somebody, for example, it immediately tells me you could be getting scammed. So don't do this. And it doesn't allow me to access my bank account, bank app while I'm on a video call. So I think the banks are doing things. I think the law enforcement is from what I understand, absolutely inundated with cybercrime complaints, not just in volume, but also value. And it is also the third thing also seems to be this psychological play that keeps the victim trapped into constantly transferring money, even up to ridiculous amounts like 21 crores, which why anyone would have lying idle in their bank account is another question to ask.
Neelam, do you want to ask a question?
Hi, Soumya. Thanks for the
Right.
wonderful discussion. Soumya, what surprised you the most while doing your research for this book? Was there a particular case or scam that really moved you personally?
That's a great question. I'll answer it in two ways. So a lot of people I spoke to, for some kinds of scams, I just could not get a victim to talk to me. Romance scam was one of them. A lot of people told me stories offline about it, but they just didn't want to be used even on a pseudonym, etc. So there are all kinds of stories, many of which haven't made it. But I think two things that really surprised me was one that my recollection of writing down play by play how I lost money was often getting very distorted as I was writing it down. And it happened to me and my husband both together. So I kept consulting him for the details. And it shows me that even when you're cool and level headed, uh, your fear while you're going through a scam and the anger afterwards can really change your perception of things. I filed an online cyber complaint. I never followed up on it. So all of the things that we are told to do or we are told to take precaution of, I didn't follow any of it while I was at the receiving end of it. And it made me wonder if there's something wrong with me or what. And so when I was speaking to other victims, I was a little more empathetic because you don't think straight, even if you've got the best of training or the best of best practices. So that was one surprising thing. The other one was that I was always under the impression that a scammer reaches out to you with pretty much a set psychological profile, all sorts of data on you already. That's not really the case all the time. A lot of people that I spoke to, some of the stories which didn't make it, a scammer reaches out to you with a certain initial starting point of data on you. And then their endeavor in the first couple of minutes is to keep getting you to tell them more information. Sometimes even in a pre-scam screening call, which seems like a wrong number, just so that they can A, confirm what they already know about you, and B, get more qualitative data on you, so that when the scam actually happens, it is as tailored to you as possible for max value uh, extraction, if I could say it that way. So that was surprising to me. What I say to somebody when I get a scam call can actually also protect me because sometimes a scammer doesn't know enough to be successful of it. And I'll give you an example. I got a scam call saying, "Ma'am, आपका SBI का account block हो गया है," which is a clever question because SBI is the largest bank by number of accounts. I don't have an SBI account. So I said, "Sir, I think you're wrong. I have two bank accounts. Neither is SBI. Which account is blocked?" I was just having some fun. So the guy didn't know what to do. So he fumbled a little bit and said, "Sorry, आपने गलत सुन लिया, ma'am. Actually, आपका RBI का account blocked हो चुका है." And then I abused him a lot and he blocked me. But But these are methods to get you to tell them. I think he was hoping that I would tell him what brands I have an account in, but I didn't. So yeah.
Also, another question: did you notice any particular pattern? A particular segment is more vulnerable to these frauds. Maybe senior people or younger people, or what kind of information they have when they contact their victims?
I don't think one person set of people is particularly more vulnerable than others, with some exceptions like we were discussing. Women with access to internet for the first time, or people who are transacting for the first time online. People from very conservative homes are vulnerable to blackmail, for example. But the patterns are in the information that people approach you with. So if it's a romance scam, they likely have access to the data you put up on a shadi.com or a Jeevan Sathi, for example, or if you're on dating websites. So they can gauge how long you've been looking for a partner, maybe to establish if you'll quickly fall for a woman wanting to contact you or not. In the case of elderly people, they'll want to know if you live with family or not. Perhaps your children are abroad. They'll know how you invested. In the case of somebody who's mid-career or early mid-career like me, they'll target me by wanting to know if I invest money. Maybe they know that I've just been promoted or I just received a big salary bump. They might offer me investment schemes. So there is something in the market for everybody, and it's just about getting under the right person's skin in the right manner.
Thank you so much. Another question, Abhilash, is for you. What made you to give your Aadhaar number when you know everything? What made you to give your Aadhaar number
No,
to
I
that
didn't. I
guy?
didn't give my Aadhaar number. I gave a random.
Wrong also. You should say no.
No, I said no. I said, why do you need it? He said that this is, I don't need the OTP, I need your Aadhaar number. I said, okay, then give me. Then I took the paper, I went in, I just wrote random numbers and I just gave it to him. And he didn't bother checking if they were 12 numbers or not. So just, I just agreed to fine, take it. But yeah, I mean, I've given the wrong number a lot in a lot of places. And I also have like one story that Soumya also mentioned. One of my friends was got a scam call, and you mentioned about social engineering in your book as well. The person who called knew that her name was some Gupta, and what her age was. And the person was like, "Oh, आपके husband ने आपका number दिया है, अब हमको कुछ पैसे transfer करने हैं." And she's not married, so she immediately responded saying that मेरी तो शादी नहीं हुई है. And then the script changed. Oh, नहीं नहीं, आपके पापा ने आपका number दिया था. And then the conversation continues from there. So this is how, I mean, probably the tracking how much information they have is crazy, and they know that this is a girl who is of age who should be married right by now. So let's start with this, and then we move on to the next sort of operation. So Sonia, you have a question?
Yeah, hi. Thank you for a great session. I had worked on a report on online scams last year. One of the things I really wanted to understand, Samya, since you've been tracking it for a longish period for the book, any changes or anything that you have witnessed in terms of enforcement that I4C, which is the Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center, has managed to achieve? And right now, of course, they had started the Sayog portal to check on online cyber crimes, but now it has taken a different shape altogether. But anything that you saw about the control room that the I4C has implemented, and how that has caused a dent in sort of retrieving money or even preventing?
I have talked a little bit about I4C in the book. I haven't looked at their latest data. They do put out regular reports on what sort of crimes they've cracked down on and what the recovery rate is. But just simply going off of the MOS Finance's response in the parliament now 10 days ago, doesn't look like recovery, even if it is growing in absolute number, is anywhere close to the amount of money that's reportedly being lost. And we should also assume that the actual loss is probably several times higher than what gets reported to the police stations or to cybercrime cells. Uh, at least from the victim's point of view, or the people who I've spoken to from their point of view, they don't seem to be very aware also of the existence of an I4C or a Sahyog portal. They don't even know about 1930, for example. Most of the time when they're calling the police, they're calling up 100, not even 112. So I can imagine the I4C is doing a lot of work on the background because there's just a mountain of work to go after, and the data speaks for themselves. But at least from the individual's perspective, there is seriously a significant disconnect between the resources available for help and people who actually need that help. So that would be my limited point. But I do have to take a look at their latest numbers to see if it has increased from what I had reported. I've taken 2025 numbers when I was finishing up the draft.
Thank you.
I think we have gone over time now. Thank you so much, Soumya, for joining us today and sharing about your sort of research and talking about the book. I
Thank you.
think everyone should read the book because it's really, yeah.
You can get it online. So sorry, I'm just going to quickly plug it. You can get it online on Amazon, and it's also in several bookstores. So it's not too expensive. And I would love to know what you all think of it. So please do reach out.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us for the first edition of TIA Talks. Rajni, do you want to add something? Just so you unmute.
No, Soumya, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. It was wonderful. I hope everyone who attended it found it as informative and useful as I did. Once again, I'm glad somebody has written a book on this subject. It's very, very important, and I hope we have more such conversations. So thanks once again for being our inaugural speaker. And for those of you all who are attending it, thank you very much. Please do give us your feedback on what you thought about this conversation and what you'd like to see for the next conversations. We'll be having one every month, so once a month. So please let us know. Thanks once again and have a good evening ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya. Thank you, Bilash. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Yeah, Abhilash, thank you. Thank you.